Extinction Rebellion rushed to the streets of Melbourne to save us all from the climate. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, I'm Florian Heiser and welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. I have my stein of coffee and I think I'm going to need it today. I really think I will. So let's have a look at this article from news.com. Now this was written by Rowan Smith and he's looking at Extinction Rebellion, and this is a new, shall we say, climate organization that are petrified or terrified that the world is literally coming to an end within 12 years. They've only been going for a few months and they've managed to get a lot of publicity. So more than 1,000 people marched through the Melbourne CBD to lay dead at one of the city's busiest intersections this afternoon. So this is their protest. They were all lying down. They were all lying down. I guess you'd be a bit hot there and all that stuff, but it's Melbourne. I mean, you know. Well, actually, no, Melbourne can be terribly hot. What am I saying? Holding placards and banners that read, "Don't burn my future. Too late, you bastards. We've done asking nicely." The so-called snap ended at Burke Street and Swanston Streets for a die-in. A die-in, so where they're lying around. The climate emergency, that's what it's being called now. Have you all noticed that? It's being referred to as climate emergency. Rally was organised by Extinction Rebellion, the same group behind large-scale disruptions in London last month. More than 5,000 people responded to an invitation to attend, but less than half of that number showed up. That's still pretty good. That's a really good hit rate. I've organised events where, marketing, networking events where you get like a couple of hundred people sign up. And if you don't make them pay, your hit rate's a lot lower. So what you do is you put a $5 ticket price on there, then you get more people turning up to these type of events. It's just something to consider there. So, among them were hundreds of school students. Oh, so they're wagging again, including a pair who climbed on top of a tram shelter to enjoy the view. Well, they're dancing around. Father Bog Maguire spoke on the steps of Parliament House, telling activists he woke up this morning and realised we're all in this together. Okay, sure, mate. Sure. Australian musician Lisa Mitchell performed a song for the crowd before the march. They marched down Burke Street. There was a large police presence, and organisers told News.com they'd been in constant communication with Victoria Police in the lead up to the event. So, we all remember when Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern came to Australia, even when Milo Yiannopoulos came to Australia, and particularly in Victoria, the police there charged them for the extra security that was needed. Now, are these protesters, and we can see them here in this image, are they going to be charged for this? We can see their finances are all available online. We'll have a look. I doubt it. We're all in this together. Okay. Yep. Sorry, there's something with my printing issues there. Protesters outside Parliament House. The die-in tactic is nothing new for the group, which held a similar event in Paris early this month. On May 12th, the protesters in Paris lay on the ground in flaked blood with flowers discarded around them. So, I mean, these people are acting like cult members. I've done a previous video where they are referred to as cult members. And I'd encourage you, I'll link that up there, I'd encourage you to have a look at that because their behavior is that of people in a cult, honestly. It really is. And this all comes from the climate march. So let's get back to this article. The group said the rally was organised in response to Australian federal election results, which saw the pro-Coal Liberal government return to power. Okay, now there's a quote here that I want to refer to. This is from Dr. Alan Finkel, Order of Australia, the chief scientist of Australia. Now, in 2017, in a Senate hearing, he was asked what the impact would be, or, if the world were to reduce carbon emissions by 1.3%, what impact would that have on the changing climate in the world? And his response that the impact would be virtually nothing. Okay. Now I've dated this reference from the 4th of December 2018 because this is taken from a written response he did to articles prepared by Andrew Bolt. Because Andrew Bolt leapt upon this from the Senate hearing to show that the reason we're saying 1.3%, that's all of Australia's carbon emissions, to show that it would make absolutely no impact. Now, following on from this statement, he starts going on about, even though it won't make any impact, we still should do it because of all these emotive reasons. So our chief scientist is not using a rational decision to make his argument. Or he is, but it's based on the emotion of the populace and what their will is, not what is the best outcome. Okay? So that's just something I want to add there, because they're responding. They're responding to our election results. They're responding to concerns from coal, and coal is a big part of our economy. And here, our chief scientist, 2 years ago, or even a year ago, he admitted it again, that it would make no difference. It would make no difference ending it. So, that's just something to consider. The climate emergency. Notice how they're calling it climate emergency again. It's terms that people use. They stick in your mind. They're creating these images here of all of the death, and it's a climate emergency. It's not a political issue. It's a scientific fact. Okay, well, I've got evidence right here where anything Australia will do will be irrelevant. And I would argue it would actually be worse. By us reducing our carbon footprint, it's going to mean that you'll be going to countries, say Adani, they will start sourcing resources from countries that have less clean coal as we do. They have less efficient energy productions and mining, and even just workplace environments than Australia does. Don't you want to be ethical in how that you help these countries develop? But no, they don't care about that, because it's not political, even though we're seeing that it is. So before calling on Prime Minister Scott Morrison and the federal government to take immediate and drastic action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2025. Net zero by 2025. Victorian police has been made aware of the protest and told Nine they were well equipped and prepared to deploy resources, responded and intervened when needed. A number of traffic management points will be in place along Burke Street, Swanson, Collins and Flinders Street. Okay, who's paying for that traffic management? Are they? I bet you they should. Guarantee they can't afford it, not with their budget. Because let's have a look also, while we're at it, we'll look at this. This is the revenue for Extinction, or the revenue sources for Extinction Rebellion. You can see at the beginning there, because it's a European one, you can see there they had £0, and the big part of it was from that red grant money. So this has obviously been achieved through grants, and I haven't been able to find out where the grants have come from. But only then when they got rolling, and they got donor money, and then they got crowdsourcing, and now it's all crowdsourcing. So people are just jumping on the bandwagon. So, where's it going? Individuals have the right to lawfully attend events and protests. However, we ask that people do so peacefully and respect without impacting on the rest of the community. Well, are you going to charge them? Are you going to charge them? Where's the double standard? Victoria Police will not tolerate those who break the law, yeah you do, or engage in antisocial or violent behaviour. Yes you do. You do. You did with Southern and Molyneux. 10 days of protests organised by Extinction Rebellion in London last month saw activists glue themselves to trains and chain themselves to Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn's home, the BBC reported. Wow. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at a video from Extinction Rebellion. We look at their marketing spiel here. Can you hear the music there, how they've crafted it? I mean, it's a little minute thing. Some floods. Extreme weather. Wildfires. Crop failures. Food shortages. Mass migration. Mass extinction. Governments have known about this for 30 years. They've failed to respond well. It's time to act. Our demands are, here their demand, declare a climate and ecological emergency, halt biodiversity loss and go carbon neutral by 2025, create a citizens' assembly on climate justice. What the hell is climate justice? Is this a rebranding of social justice? Join us in London and cities all over the world. Okay, so, I mean, now, we've got a few things here that we need to consider. And one of them is that, they're painting it as causing flooding, it's causing extreme weather, it's causing wildfires, it's causing mass migration. Let's talk about these things. Now, the flooding and the wildfires, the extreme weather. Okay. Now, I would say that a big part of this issue is simply confirmation bias. And this is a quote from Scott Pullis. Confirmation bias is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way which confirms one's pre-existing beliefs or hypothesis. Okay, and he's an academic social psychologist. So I would argue that because they're seeing all of these, these terrible, scary things, they're suffering from, or they're just experiencing confirmation bias. But Florian, there's so many more floods, there's so many more wildfires. You're just a nutcase, skeptic. It's evidence there. My emotions tell me it's happening because I see it on social media. Well, let me put an argument to you. This is the image I'm showing you here is the population density of Australia in 1920 and the population density in 2016. Now, the scales are different because one's, inhabitants per square mile, and then we evolved and are using the much more reasonable metric system now in the future. Australian Advanced. And, Northern Australia and Central Australia, there's some funny stuff's going on there in the 20s. But nonetheless, you can see that our population density is increasing. We're encroaching more on the natural environment. So people's issues or concerns or greater encounter with these, disasters, wildfires, extreme weather, flooding, these are all more prevalent because we are occupying more of the planet. There are more people around these areas. The same thing's happening in California with the bushfires there, how they're more extreme. People will blame them on climate change because it's their confirmation bias coming through right there. Their confirmation bias is coming right through. But it's all to do with population densities and increased population encroachment. You can see in the north of encroachment of the natural environment. In the far north of Queensland, there was a flood that was 80-kilometre wide river that you could see from space. Okay, population there wasn't very large. You look historically, these floods and these events have happened. But Florian, there's more deaths now than there were because there are more people and there are more people occupying areas. Okay, that's why. That is why. It's confirmation bias. That's the risk. We saw with our own chief scientist admitting that Australia will have absolute, and I'll bring it up again, Australia will make virtually nothing. It'll make no impact. But then in the next paragraph, he's talking about how we should do it anyway. Okay? We should do it anyway. So we've got we've looked at how it's causing floods. What about crop failure and food shortages? I mean, that's definitely got to be due to the environment, doesn't it? Food shortages are more to do with distribution and logistics. We actually have food surpluses in many portions of the world, but it's just being distributed badly. One example is in African countries, exported parts of chicken kill local industries because they love, drumsticks and breasts, so all the rest gets sent overseas and it destroys the local farming industry. That's where you get food shortages. You also have food shortages resulting from use or sale of grains and foodstuffs for biofuels. Crop failures. I mean, there's natural environmental cycles with regards to, climate. Sometimes you've got good seasons. Sometimes you have bad seasons. I was talking to our family who are in cotton. They're having one of the best years they've had. Okay, it goes up and down. The problem is the negative is the more exciting news. I can make a video that's negative, about the economy, and people will love it. They'll eat it up. Government have failed to respond. Well, they have, but not the way you want. You want it to be declared an emergency. Their demands. They want to declare it an emergency. They want to end biodiversity, but they want to go carbon neutral by 2025. Now that is insane. That is insane. And here's a quote from the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. And this was made, a couple of days ago or last month in regards to what was happening over in London. The Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit, which supports its course of strong action and demands, said that the time frame being urged by XR, Extinction Rebellion, was an ambition that technically, economically, and politically had absolutely no chance of being fulfilled. They calculated that to go neutral by 2025, flying would need to be scrapped, and 38 million cars, no more flying, although maybe we could get kick-ass Zeppelins, but that's another story. Both petrol and diesel would need to be removed from the roads. In addition, 26 million gas boilers would need to be disconnected in 6 years. Okay, and this is from an environmental group. So they're critical of this whole approach by Extinction Rebellion. So what we can do is let's have a look at their website a little bit to get this is their issue here. They want you to join the rebellion, and they've been going for a few months. What should we look? We've got the truth. Where's the FAQ? Did I see that before? Action, news, frequently asked questions. So, how are you funded? And what do you spend the money on? Extinction Rebellion has had various costs for our launch and Rebellion 1 period. So now we're going into Rebellion 2. In autumn 2018, we raised approximately £180,000. Okay, with the majority coming from crowdfunding. Yes, after you got that grant. Where's that grant from? For the record, this 2 period of Rebellion has been raising money from crowdfunding, major donors, NGOs and foundations, with the majority coming once again from our online crowdfunding sources. How much do you want to bet Soros is in there somehow? Because, I mean, frankly, he's involved in everything. I wouldn't be surprised. 3% of our volunteers are given volunteer living expenses. Our transparency about who and why is here. We're clear about spending conscientiously, and recorded payments of dates are public and transparent. Aren't you just a group of middle-class left-wing activists? Extinction Rebellion is made up of people of all ages and backgrounds. They don't say no. From under 18 to over 80s, there are thousands of people. Well, yeah, there are thousands of people who are falling for this issue, who are suffering from confirmation bias in the information they're getting. What is your emergency vehicles, yada, yada, yada. Aren't governments already acting? In order to limit warming to 1.5 degrees, recommended by IPCC report, global net CO2 emissions need to decline by 45% from 2010 levels by 2013. Despite initial progress on cutting its carbon emissions, the UK will miss legal climate targets without urgent action. So they're calling for drastic changes. Aren't you just a bunch of law-breaking anarchists or economic terrorists or eco-fascists? Well, yeah, I mean, they're non-violent, good on them. And I'll link to this if you want to go through it. But their propaganda piece we saw there, I think, gives us enough of an understanding of what they're like. So this is concerning that this has happened in Melbourne. There's evidence against it. Even our own chief scientists will say one thing and then pander to the populace on another. I really think the more and more I read about this, the more and more I see that we're seeing a case of confirmation bias for people and the media. They're treating our scientists like a priestly class that can never be wrong. They're not daring to question. They're not daring to challenge. They're just going along with the flow. How many people will accuse you of science denier if you're skeptical about these type of things? How many of them, they're mentioning, in their video here, they're mentioning mass migration. How are they going to address, the issues regarding welfare, which is attracting mass migration, where people are, if they really are environmental refugees, they're just not stopping at the one country, they keep migrating. So guys, let me know what you think. I think it's all a bit interesting, honestly. I'm concerned with it. I think we need to discuss these things more often. I think nuclear needs to be put on the table as a way to address energy. I think anything that we do to mitigate our carbon output is going to, and I'll bring this quote up again, is going to make no difference here in Australia. No difference. It's just going to be pandering to a minority, and it's going to have a net negative. It will have a net negative. Just look at recycling. Anyway, guys, please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow. Bye for now.